Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Tin Man Score channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and today I'm reacting to my second Midnight Terrors video for you guys. This one is titled 4 Scary True Valentine's Day Horror Stories. So, without further ado, I'm going to turn these lights off, move the camera back up here for you guys, and let's get this reaction on the road and in the bag. Okay, here we go.
About 2 years ago, I was out shopping for a Valentine's Day gift for my girlfriend.
Okay.
Nothing crazy, just a box of chocolates and a teddy bear. Something simple to show I cared. The store wasn't far, maybe a 10-minute walk, so I figured I'd just go on foot.
That's what I would do if I was dating somebody. Buy them chocolates and get them a giant teddy bear. Just to show a lot of love and appreciation, you know what I mean?
It was around 8 p.m., and I just wanted to grab what I needed and get home. The streets were pretty empty at that time of night, so instead of taking the sidewalk, I walked in the road since there were barely any cars. There was a park along the way, but I didn't feel like cutting through it in the dark. As I approached the entrance, I got this weird feeling that someone was behind me. At first, I brushed it off, assuming it was just someone else walking home. But after a few more steps, I could hear the sound of footsteps getting closer. Then I heard a loud, "Hey, kid!" I flinched, but kept walking, hoping if I ignored it, whoever it was would leave me alone. A few seconds later, I heard it again, this time with more force, and that's when I finally turned around. There, just a few feet away, was this massive guy, way too close for comfort. I'm not exactly small, I'm 6'1", but this guy was even taller than me and built like a linebacker. He just stood there, staring at me, before casually asking, "How's your night going?" For a second, I felt kind of bad. Maybe I was overreacting, assuming the worst. He might have just been some friendly guy making conversation.
Nah, I don't think he's no friendly guy. He's just acting like that, just so he wouldn't come off suspicious.
But something about him just felt off. He kept trying to talk to me, asking where I was headed. I kept it vague and said, "Just the store." Then, out of nowhere, he walked up to a car parked nearby and leaned against it. "I can give you a ride," he offered, way too casually. I quickly shook my head. "No thanks, I'm good." That should have been the end of it, but he kept pushing, acting like it was weird that I wouldn't just hop into a stranger's car. Then he said something even weirder. "What about car surfing?" Before I could even respond, he started climbing halfway onto the hood of the car, like he was about to show me how to do some stupid stunt. At that point, I had no interest in talking to him anymore. I just kept walking. The store wasn't far, and I figured once I got inside, he'd leave me alone. And for a little while, he did.
Oh, I got a bad feeling he ain't gonna leave him alone. I know that guy ain't gonna take no for an answer.
I was in and out of the store quickly, grabbing the chocolates and teddy bear before heading back home. But as soon as I stepped outside, my stomach dropped. The guy was there again. But this time, he wasn't walking behind me. He was on the other side of the street, keeping pace with me from a distance. It felt like he had been waiting for me to come back out. Then he suddenly yelled, "Hey!" I ignored him and kept walking. But when I glanced back, I noticed something that made my skin crawl. The car was gone. That meant he had either walked all the way here, or he wasn't alone. Either way, it made my stomach twist in knots. This guy had no reason to be here. I tried to stay calm, but when I saw him pick up his pace, my instinct screamed at me to get out of there. He was bigger than me, stronger than me, and had already tried to get me into his car once. I decided the fastest way home was through an alleyway, so I made a quick turn, hoping to lose him. When I checked over my shoulder, he was gone. For a moment, I felt relief. But as I made my way down the alley, my heart nearly stopped. Parked near the exit was the same car he had been leaning on earlier. At that I didn't think, I just ran. I bolted out of the alley, across the next street, and all the way home. When I finally got inside, I locked the door behind me and tried to make sense of what had just happened. Something about it wasn't sitting right, so I started searching online, looking for any information about him or the car, but found nothing. Then, on a hunch, I decided to check if the car had been reported stolen, and it had. That's when everything clicked. The guy never owned the car. He had been lying about it the whole time. If he was lying about that, then what else had he been lying about? I don't know if the police ever found him or if he was caught, but I reported the car just in case. To this day, I still wonder what would have happened if I had made a different decision that night, if I had agreed to get in that car. I don't think I would have made it home.
Well, for one thing, I'm glad you reported the car when you found out it was stolen. But I bet you that guy was probably a human trafficker. You never know. But yeah, you were wise not to get in that car with him. And I was thinking that he just parked that car by that alleyway just so he can hide it while he was stalking that dude. Man, I hope they did call him because he don't need to be on the street.
Back when I was in high school, I lived in one of those tiny Texas towns where everybody was either related or had some kind of grudge against each other. Since I wasn't related to anyone, I fell into the second category. To make matters worse, I was dating a pretty blonde girl, which didn't sit well with a lot of guys in town. There was nothing major, just the usual petty harassment, occasional fights, and the kind of small town drama that comes from people having nothing better to do.
Probably jealous that you're dating her, not them. I would not want to move to that area, that's for sure.
But things had been escalating, and I didn't want to push my luck. That's why, on Valentine's Day, instead of going to the school dance, my girlfriend and I decided to just stay in and watch a movie at her place while her parents went out. We figured it was better to just avoid the whole scene altogether. We borrowed her dad's car, a little Honda hatchback, and went into town to rent a movie and grab some ice cream from Dairy Queen before heading back to her place.
I love going to Dairy Queen. I always like getting the blizzards over there. But let's just continue on with this guy's story.
She lived way out in the woods, down one of those pitch black country roads with no streetlights. The kind of place where the only thing you see at night is the reflection of your own headlights. It was just the two of us, cruising down the empty road, chatting and eating our blizzards, when I noticed a car behind us. At first, it didn't seem like anything unusual, just someone else on the road, probably another high school kid heading home. But then something happened that froze me in place. When the headlights of the car behind us flooded the inside of our car, I saw something move in the back seat. Not just something, someone. Two hands gripping the seat, a head rising up from the hatchback area. And just as quickly as the light hit, the head snapped back down, disappearing into the darkness. My blood turned ice cold. I couldn't react right away. My brain was struggling to process what I had just seen. My girlfriend was still talking, oblivious to what had just happened, while I sat there gripping the steering wheel with a death grip, trying not to lose my mind. Slowly, without letting my voice shake, I reached down into my pocket and wrapped my fingers around the small pocket knife I carried with me. It was the only thing I had. She must have noticed the shift in my body language because she glanced over at me and asked, "What's wrong?" I forced myself to sound casual. "Nothing. I just gotta stop at my friend's house real quick." That was total bullshit. I didn't have any friends in that town. She knew it. I knew it. But I needed to act like I had a plan. The first house that appeared on the side of the road, I pulled into the driveway and threw the car into park. The moment the wheels stopped, I jumped out and yelled at my girlfriend to get out too. She hesitated, completely confused. and asking me what the hell was going on. But the urgency in my voice must have kicked in because she scrambled out of the passenger seat.
He's trying to save your life, girl. He didn't want to make a scene while driving in the car with you that there's a guy literally in the back hatchback part of your car. Lordy, but I'm glad that it kicked in her brain to say, get out of the car. Let's just see what happens next.
With my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, I flipped the driver's seat forward and lunged into the back seat like a complete maniac. And then he popped up, like a goddamn jack-in-the-box, hands up, waving, like he was trying to calm me down even though he was the one hiding in the back of our car. Hey, what y'all up to tonight? I was so stunned I couldn't even react right away. It was some random kid from our high school, someone my girlfriend and I had never spoken to in our entire lives. My brain was still trying to catch up when I blurted out, "What the hell are you doing in our car?" And then he had the nerve to act like this was all completely normal. "I thought you guys were going to the dance, so I figured I'd just hitch a ride." We just stood there, mouths hanging open, completely dumbfounded. It was like the guy thought we'd just laugh it off, maybe even invite him to hang out. Now, we were in the middle of nowhere, standing in some random person's driveway, and whatever plan he had been cooking up in his head was clearly ruined. He started acting like this was all just a misunderstanding, being all weirdly casual about the fact that he had been hiding in our car. And here's the part that still makes me shake my head. For some reason, probably because we were two dumb teenagers who didn't know what else to do, we actually drove him to the dance. Not because we were trying to be nice, but because at that moment, it seemed like the best way to just get rid of it. So, we drove straight to the school, pulled up to the entrance, and as soon as we stopped, he turned around in his seat and said, "You guys should come in with me." Yeah, not happening. We told him we weren't going and waited until he got out of the car before we sped the hell out of there. The second he was gone, my girlfriend just broke down. She started shaking and crying, and that's when it really hit us. That guy had been in our car for who knows how long. What the hell had he been planning to do? Had he been waiting for us to drive somewhere secluded? What if the car behind us had never passed by and lit up the back seat? Would he have just stayed there, waiting for the right moment to make a move? I still don't have answers. All I know is that to this day, I triple check my back seat before getting into any car.
I'd be mad as fire too if somebody was in the back seat of my car. He probably would have got out of your car when you guys got into the house and waited until the perfect time to either rob or murder you. But I don't want to think that. You never know. But I'm glad that you were able to like drive him to the school dance and get rid of him.
Back when I was in high school and college, I worked at Dunkin' Donuts for about 7 years, bouncing around between different locations. Most of the time I worked in my hometown shop, where we would get the plain yeast rings delivered and frost them ourselves as needed. It was just part of the job, something we didn't think twice about. But that changed when I transferred to a new store about half an hour from home. Unlike my previous shop, this place had their donuts delivered directly from corporate, pre-frosted, perfectly shaped, and almost too flawless.
What? I never thought they did that. I always assumed that they made the donuts right in the shop.
They looked exactly like the donuts in commercials, always neatly dipped, evenly spread, and never smushed together. It was a little eerie, honestly, but I didn't question it. That Valentine's Day morning, I walked into what I expected to be a normal busy Saturday shift. We had just received a fresh batch of brownie batter donuts, a seasonal favorite that customers went crazy for every year. The place was slammed, which was nothing unusual, so I focused on making sandwiches at the prep station, while my manager, Jeremy, ran around trying to keep up with the rush. I barely paid attention when he rushed past me the first time, carrying a pastry tray. But when I saw him violently throwing something in the trash, looking like he had just seen a ghost, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I laughed at first. Jeremy, what the heck are you doing? He turned around, and I instantly knew something was really, really wrong. His face was pale, and his hands were shaking. I had never seen Jeremy look so lost, so panicked. He swallowed hard, then said, "Someone filled the brownie batter donuts with staples." At
What?
first, I thought I misheard him. Staples? Like the office supply kind. I just stared at him in shock, trying to process what he had just said. But he kept talking. Apparently, one of the stores in our chain, one of 10 locations, had discovered staples inside every single brownie batter donut in their morning order. That was at least 48 donuts per store, possibly more depending on their sales. Corporate had just called him, telling him to throw away every brownie batter donut in our inventory immediately.
Well, how in the world did the staples get into the donuts to begin with? Unless corporate had a disgruntled worker and decided to poison everybody or kill people with staples in their donuts. Oh, heck no, I'm glad they called and be like, get rid of them quick before somebody wants them.
I felt my stomach drop. Jeremy was still frantically tossing them into the trash, but all I could think about was how many had already been sold that morning. I didn't know whether to feel relieved that we hadn't run out yet, or completely sick at the thought of what could have happened if someone had bitten into one of those. And that's when the worst case scenario started racing through my mind. What if a kid had gotten one? What if some family had gone out that morning to grab donuts for breakfast, given one to their kid without thinking, and didn't realize until it was too late?
Oh, yeah, that's everybody's worst fear. My stomach would be dropping. My nerves would be shattered, that's for sure.
I imagined the horror of someone biting into a donut, feeling the crunch of metal instead of soft brownie batter. The thought of a staple getting lodged in someone's throat, cutting their mouth, or even being swallowed made me feel like I was going to be sick. I had so many questions, but Jeremy didn't have answers. He didn't know where the staples came from, whether it had been an accident or intentional, or even if they had caught whoever was responsible. He just kept throwing out trays of donuts, one after another, and eventually I started helping him. And then, that was it. The shift went on, the rush continued, and people came in completely unaware that just moments earlier, we had been disposing of potentially deadly donuts. I never heard anything in the news, never got an update from corporate, and as far as I know, neither did Jeremy. To this day, I have no idea if anyone got hurt, if they found out who did it, or if it was covered up. All I know is that someone, somewhere, either made a massive mistake or deliberately tried to hurt people that morning, and I'll never look at a brownie batter donut the same way again.
Lord have mercy. If I found out that was happening, I'm grabbing that worker and firing their butts, but also maybe suing them for potentially harming customers. Because, yeah, that's every store's nightmare. Is like if they found out their food was contaminated and then they served it to people, it's going to bite them back in the butt with lawsuits. Yeah, that's just wrong. I hope they did get that guy arrested.
It was Valentine's Day, and my girlfriend and I were trying to figure out something semi-romantic to do together. We're both college students at a small school in Kentucky, and since most students on campus, myself included, couldn't afford to keep a car, walking was our main mode of transportation. With it being freezing cold and snowy outside, there weren't too many date night options that didn't involve staying inside where it was warm. Eventually, we decided on the classic broke college student move, ordering food on Uber Eats. Most of the restaurants had already closed for the night, but Taco Bell was still open, so naturally, we placed an order. What we didn't realize was that there were no active drivers at that time. Whether it was because of the weather or the time of night, I'm not sure, but the app defaulted to the pickup setting. Since there was no option to cancel, I was left with one choice: walking a mile and a half in freezing, icy conditions to get our food.
First of all, if I was a college student and I did not have no mode of transportation, I'll be asking a friend if they got a car to take me somewhere. I'm not walking in the freezy rain temperatures and probably catching a cold from it. And I'll be mad if the app I ordered my food said they couldn't have nobody deliver it, so you had to go pick it up yourself. But let's continue on with this guy's story.
Not exactly ideal, but I was a broke college student who had just spent my last few dollars on this meal. There was no way I was letting that food go to waste. After getting a hug and a kiss from my girlfriend, I bundled up and set off toward Taco Bell. Walking through campus at night never really bothered me. At 5'9", I wasn't exactly the biggest guy, but I wasn't someone that people usually messed with either. However, once I made it past campus and into the residential part of town, things started to feel a little sketchier. The streets were eerily empty, the kind of empty that makes you second guess why you're even outside in the first place. The air was brutally cold, the kind of chill that freezes the sweat in your hair, and the icy roads made walking even more difficult. That's when I saw him. Up ahead, a man was walking toward me from the other side of the street. Two things immediately put me on edge. First, he was wearing one of those long trench coats, the kind you'd typically associate with someone trying way too hard to look mysterious or, someone who shouldn't be trusted. Second, there was no reason for anyone to be outside in this weather. If you weren't making a food run like me or heading home from work, there was no logical reason to be out. Still, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was in the same situation as me. Maybe he just liked the cold. Either way, I wasn't interested in finding out. Not wanting to interact, I switched sides of the street and kept my head down. As we got closer, I braced myself for any weirdness, but nothing happened. We passed each other without a word, neither of us acknowledging the other. I let myself relax, but being the cautious person that I am, I still glanced over my shoulder a few times just to make sure he was still heading in his original direction. The first couple of times I checked, he was walking away from me, just like before. But then, after about 2 minutes, I looked back again, and my stomach dropped. He had turned around, and he was walking in my direction now. Even worse, he was picking up speed. A deep, primal instinct told me this wasn't normal. I wasn't just being paranoid. This guy was following me.
Yeah, I'll be thinking the same way like he would, because if I see another guy walking on the road with a trench coat on, I would just think that he's just walking to get to one place from another, like I am. But if he turns around and starts speed walking or chasing you, nah, he was trying to eye out a potential target of possibly robbing.
I couldn't outright run because of the icy conditions, but I quickened my pace. The second I did, he sped up too. Within moments, we were side by side on opposite sides of the street. Then he started yelling at me. I couldn't make out what he was saying at first, but that's when I saw something fall from his sleeve. It hit the ground with a metallic clatter, the sound of something heavy and solid. It could have been a metal pipe, a crowbar, or even a large knife. Whatever it was, it had been concealed in his coat. That's when it hit me. I was in actual danger. My fight or flight instinct kicked in, but I couldn't run on this ice. I reached into my pocket and gripped my own pocket knife, flipping it open while taking a step back. Trying to keep my voice steady, I said something like, "Hey man, I don't want any trouble. I've got a knife on me." The second I said that, he froze. His entire demeanor shifted, and in an almost laughably fake tone, he blurted out, "Oh, I thought you were someone else who just attacked me." Yeah, right. I wasn't buying it, but I wasn't about to escalate the situation either. I forced a casual laugh and said, "Seems like you've got the wrong person, my dude." He stood there for a second, staring at me, before finally taking a step back toward his side of the street. Just like that, he turned and started walking in the opposite direction. I watched him for a while, making sure he was actually leaving before I continued my walk to Taco Bell. My adrenaline was still pumping, and I kept glancing over my shoulder every few steps. Then, he was back. At some point, without me noticing, he had turned around again and was now on the same path as me, following from a distance. I didn't stop this time. I speed walked the rest of the way, constantly looking behind me, but at some point he just disappeared. There were no turns he could have taken, no buildings he could have ducked into. It was like he just vanished. By the time I finally made it back to campus, my hand had been on my pocket knife the entire way. I never found out what he wanted, but whatever it wasn't good. Maybe he saw me as an easy target. Maybe he really did mistake me for someone else. Or maybe, just maybe, he had been waiting for me to let my guard down.
That is strange. Like you said, he probably was waiting for him to let his guard down so he can attack him. But if he had a metal object underneath his coat, something tells me he was planning on killing him and not just robbing him. So glad that he turned around and said that he had a knife on him and changed the whole attitude of that guy, basically. And he came up with that excuse saying, "Oh, I thought you were that guy. You attacked me." Yeah, right. You just said that so you wouldn't look suspicious. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on those post notifications for more Midnight Terrors reactions like this. This has been another successful installment of the Tin Man's Corner channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor. And I said that's a wrap, and have a nice day, y'all. Bye.